Hello, my name is Alex Gutierrez Mendez, and this is my case study. I will be doing it on Hispanics and the public library. And this is a research case study that I found that was done here in North Carolina by NCCU. So, the purpose and the or objective of the study was to assess the health information seeking behaviors of Hispanics in the e-health environment. So, for definition, health literacy is the degree to which individuals have the capacity to obtain, process, and understand basic health information and services needed to make appropriate health decisions. And then e-health is the delivery of health information and services through the internet and different available technologies to improve or enable the health and healthcare of an individual. So essentially, the study is being done on Hispanics in the North Carolina region to see their health literacy and have more of an understanding in how that ties to the public library. So, just a little bit of background information. Hispanic adults have a lower average health literacy than adults in any other racial ethnic group. And a lot of that is tied back to limited English proficiency, socioeconomic and cultural factors, such as lack of access to internet, low English proficiency, and low levels of education. And this study is being done in more of an urban area to better understand the Hispanic population, because in North Carolina, between 2000 and 2010, the Hispanic population in North Carolina grew from 4.7% to 8.9%, 39%. And previous research suggests that Hispanics rely on media, family and or friends, and medical professionals for health information, and higher percentage of non-internet users accounts to 24%. And some of the reasons that the Hispanic population has a lower average health literacy can also be addressed with the amount of sites that exist in Spanish for Spanish speakers, and the amount of substance they have of information. With the increase of technology, e-health has become more of a concern and a topic of study for marketing researchers. And in terms of the Hispanic population, there has been an increase of use of mobile phones and the internet because of mobile phones, but there still seems to exist a barrier in terms of e-health for the Hispanic population. And the Hispanic population is one that's being studied more because researchers are trying to remedy the issue of low health literacy. And later on in the study, they mentioned the different types of barriers that many Hispanic people said were the lack of time, the lack of skill to use um, technology, transportation to public libraries, the limited English proficiency, the lack of eligibility for library cards, and other reasons. And two other main internal factors within the Hispanic community that were addressed from previous research is also the fear of computers and unwillingness to adopt technology, as the Hispanic population, even with technology becoming bigger and bigger in our society, Hispanics tend to not want to adapt and adopt many technological advances. And many researchers find that the increase of Hispanic users with mobile phones might be a good thing in terms of e-health, because Hispanic users might be able to find more information online and have more access to it. But even though the percentages between other minorities might be the same with Hispanic users, the issue is there's still that gap where other minorities are still able to access e-health information and Hispanic users lack the need to do that. And another interesting study they found was that foreign-born Hispanics used the library less than US-born Hispanics, and they used the web for other topics, while US-born Hispanics used it for health specifically. So looking at the research design, the sample was done in North Carolina using Hispanics from a Hispanic community organization and a public library in Siler City, and then an ethnic grocery store in Durham, North Carolina. So the size was about 26 Hispanics, 92.3% were foreign born, and 84.6% were non-English speakers. And then the method that was being used in this study was an interview administered survey with a semi-structured instrument, and the questions were structured so Hispanic speakers could grasp more of an understanding of the interview/survey that was being done. And also, many of the questions of the questionnaire had to be read out loud to help Spanish speakers have more of an understanding of what the questions were asking. And the questions consisted of their health information seeking behaviors, such as like any health information needs that they had, sources that they use, and any source preferences, and then as well as the use of the library for these health informations, and their perception of libraries and the satisfactions with it, with the services that they provided for them. Followed just by respondents' demographics and any health-related facts. There were also some open-ended questions asking about why they would possibly avoid libraries as a health information source. And the survey that was being done was developed in English and then translated to Spanish, and it was also pilot tested by 2 self-identified Hispanics. For the data collection and analysis, one collection session was done in Siler City, and 2 was done in Durham, North Carolina. It was a descriptive statistics and t-test analysis. It was a convenient sample and exploratory in nature. And essentially, the results that they had from the interview surveys, they split it into 2 groups. One being less educated people who did not complete high school, or they had some type of middle school or elementary school education, and then higher education Hispanics who at least completed high school and or pursued a higher education. And using the t-test, they found differences that showed that the lower educated Hispanics tended to have a lower health literacy versus higher educated Hispanics. Other things that they found from the survey was that Hispanics tend to rely heavily on people sources, and that relates back to what I said earlier about Hispanics having an issue on adopting technology into their households, and they tend to rely more on a medical professional or a family or friend. And the discussion, what the recommendations it gave was that libraries could essentially use this information to implement more programs that had more language options for Hispanics, and also programs that helped Hispanics learn how to use computers and how to access this health information. The participants also came from 8 different countries, and the majority of them were from Mexico. Some of the issues that could affect the results and could help improve the survey that was also talked about in the final discussion was the amount of survey respondents they had in terms of public library. Even though 26 Hispanics were recruited for the survey interview, 8 of them were from the Hispanic Community Organization, and only 3 of them were from a public library, and 15 were from an ethnic grocery store. So having more respondents from the public library, as this is the one of the main topics that's being addressed here in this case study. But the problem they had was people that they asked weren't really wanting to complete the survey / interview because of the time frame, and or they just weren't interested. One promising result is that there's an increase in internet adoption rate in the Hispanic community, and an increased use of health information on the internet in terms of e-health. So that could in time reduce that disparity. But again, different programs that can be available in different languages, especially for the Spanish speaking community, could help reduce that disparity. Another finding from the study was that 20% of the study participants used public libraries for their health information seeking, and the major activity in the library was web searching. And a lot of the self-reported barriers, which was seen from previous research, that can also be seen in this research, is a lot of participants said that they were either too busy to visit, they had no transportation, not being eligible for a library card, or they just had no health information needs. In conclusion of the study, there's always many opportunities that can be done for the Hispanic communities in terms of the library offering more programs, offering more opportunities for them to take advantage of, especially in rural areas. So, not just in urban cities, as we see in this study, but a lot of rural areas have big Hispanic communities who need these services. In terms of validity and reliability, because of the disparity in of the different communities that also differentiate from smaller cities to bigger cities, as seen is in this study, which they were trying to reduce that margin of error with Durham compared to Siler City. There's still even smaller cities and more rural areas that have a big Hispanic population. And also, depending on where the Hispanic population is, might affect the reliability of this study, just because you'll get different results every time you do it in a different area, because you'll have Spanish speakers from different countries that might not be seen in this study, or you might have more of one in this study versus the following ones that you do. But in terms of validity, I think this study is valid in trying to find what it was trying to find, which was the behaviors of the Hispanic population in terms of e-health. And that is the end of my presentation.